the quality of your constitution. Now you have to change it.
Tama.
Huh?
Tama.
All right. So let's just give it to me. And then let's
Okay.
talk about JAVAD and everyone else.
Si our favorite character,
The
JAVAD.
favorite character, JAVAD. Yep. All right.
There, there are
Give me
two
the
ano,
link.
there are two professors actually who are very um who've been very funny lately. Si the other guy,
Contreras.
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Ay,
Is this,
nako.
have we come down to having these types of professors or educators in our
Ay, nako.
system?
Well, we can
Ay.
discuss that. So just send me the link and I'll
Oh yeah, tama. Di. The link is ready. Asa naman to?
all right.
Hang on I'll send it to you sa asa man ako i-send? Sa
Tiri na lang.
dire. Okay. May problema. Alright. Okay.
It's okay, never mind. I got it. So
Okay. Let me check the audio. We're good. Alright. Stand by. Istoryang Futbolero coming up next. Okay. Okay. We're good.
all right. Yep.
Larga bola. And we're off. Hoy, good evening ladies and gentlemen. Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Welcome to Istoryang Futbolero. My name's Orion Poblete. It is Constipation Friday. That means we have our very special co-host, one of the founders of Correct Movement, Orion Perez Dumdum. Orion, kamusta bay?
Oxra gyapon bay. Kumusta mi imong kuan getaway sa asa to? Pico de Loro ba to?
Pico de Loro sa Batangas, sa Nasugbo. Okay man? Okay ra ba?
Great.
Yeah, but you can never be too careful when you go out of town. Kay scary gayapon ay pandemya, and we have the Delta
That's
variant daw.
Yeah.
Cases here na in Metro Manila. So they've discovered like around 15 cases, or no, I'm sorry, less than 15 cases of the variant, the Delta variant, much dreaded Delta variant, kay very highly contagious. So we have to be very careful. But for now, kay Constipation Friday, kinahanglan gid sa mga ginainom sa pag-constipation by
Laxative.
laxative.
Laxative, man. You need a laxative.
So make sure you have your laxative with you, kay we have really interesting characters, no? Who have captured the imagination of your host on Istoryang Futbolero, especially Orion. Ay, ang mga best friend. Naghilera. Kanya-kanya
Dagan sila
pataka.
kahilera.
Pinataka na po.
Tayo na sa ito.
So, let's start with Orion, no? Kay si Monsod manggid katong imong favorite.
Monsod, man. He's the worst of the worst of the worst ever. Freaking liars, man. The freaking abogago. The perfect example of an abogago. Because like an abogago is like lawyers are supposed to use the tenets of the law and basically, gathering evidence, basically showing proof that their client or the side that they're on is correct. Right? So they have to use evidence. But the abogago tries to twist logic to make wrong look right and make right look wrong. And that is an abogago. And that is Drilon, that is Pangilinan, that is Monson. All the people who twist the facts, twist the logic to make wrong look right and make right look wrong. So that's the way it is. We know Monson, he's been lying about the Constitution that he wrote, he and his friends wrote. And he's been saying, last week especially, he's been saying that the text of Article 7, Section 2, Section 4, he says that the spirit of the text means that President Duterte is not allowed to run anymore. But that's wrong.
He's not allowed to run for vice president because just a heartbeat away from the presidency, it would it would be remiss of the Constitution to have such a way to circumvent that particular provision. Pero you said kanina, Orion, na during the when they were
that was brought up already. That was brought up. Yes. During the deliberations, that was brought up. That was brought up by Reverend Rigos, who was one of the commissioners. And then another guy, Commissioner Regalado, he actually said, well, Reverend Rigos brought it up and said, but what if the sitting president decides to run for vice president?
Okay.
Is he allowed to run? And is he allowed, if, let's say, anything should happen to the sitting president and he is the vice president, this ex-president who is now the vice president, is he allowed to become the president if that president who was elected in the new election either dies or resigns or gets impeached? Is he allowed? And then Regalado said, well, there's nothing in the text that says he's not allowed, because what we banned, what we prohibited was re-election to the same post. So if you ran as president, you cannot run again for re-election as president, but you can run as vice president. And if as vice president, you become president, that is also perfectly allowed, because the text says no re-election, but it doesn't say anything about succession. It doesn't say bawal ang succession. And the problem with the fucking stupid abogagos in the Philippines is they're not technical. Unlike people like us who are technical. Technical, the difference between to become elected as president versus to serve as president versus to succeed into the presidency. There is a difference in the meaning of those texts. So there will be texts, for example, anyone who has served as vice president, or parang they'll say, no vice president can serve more than 2 successive terms. They will say that, right? But they use the word served. They didn't use the word has been elected as. They didn't say that. They said has served as. There is a difference between having been elected as and having served as. You may have been elected as vice president, but you did not serve as vice president. You may have been elected as vice president, but then before inauguration day, the president-elect gets a heart attack, or the president-elect says, you know what, I don't want to be president. I'll let my vice president become the president. So the vice president-elect never gets to serve a single day as vice president. He becomes president immediately on day 1, gets sworn immediately as president, not as vice president, as president.
Can we use the GMA as an example? Remember when Arap was president?
So
and
in the case
he
of
was
GMA,
vice president? Yeah.
In the case of GMA, for example, that was totally okay, because there was nothing in the text that says that she cannot run for a re-election, because she is well within the limits. So the limit says, if you have served more than 4 years as president, if you have served more, so for example, if you were a vice president and you became president. And as president, you were able to serve for more than 4 years. You can no longer run for election
Mm,
again.
okay.
But GMA only served 3.5 years.
Mm,
Not 4 years,
mm,
only 3.5 years. So pasok siya. Sulod siya.
mm,
So that's why she was allowed to run for re-election, because the 1987 Constitution allows her to run, because she did not go beyond the 4 years, because kulang pa gani siya sa 4 years. 'Di ba? Kulang siya kay 3.5 years naman siya.
Grabe, no, that's so
Yun.
interesting, Orion, that there is such a provision in the Constitution where if the person has served 4 years as president, they can't run anymore. So that means they really thought about all these different scenarios, like
They thought about it. Yeah.
including the possibility of the incumbent president running for vice president, and then if indeed, or if
Yes.
ever in the case of the future president quits, the former president who's now vice president can take over without violating the constitution.
Yes. So they thought about it. They thought about it. The text is very clear. It's very clear. So I don't understand these shitheads like Trilon and and Monsod making stuff up. I mean, like, what the fuck, man? It's already been discussed. It was very clear in the deliberations. The text of the deliberations are actually available. They're in the archives. They can be found. And actually, there is a book called "The Intent of the 1986 Constitution Writers," written by and edited by the late Father Joaquin Bernas. So the late Father Joaquin Bernas, who was himself one of the commissioners in the 1986 Constitutional Commission that wrote the 1987 Constitution, he wrote a book that basically explained what is the intention or the intent, what is the spirit of the law, so to speak, of the 1987 Constitution. And that was explained there. That, kumbaga, ang idea about a president deciding, mag-run na lang ako na as vice president para ano, okay yun, because that was already discussed. And they
You
did
know-
not write any text saying if you're president, you're not allowed to run for vice president. They didn't say that.
Feeling na ako by mao sila murag they're scared out of their wits of that possibility. Kay, di ba there's this possibility, they've been floating the idea of having Bongo as run for president and PRRD running for vice president. And people can imagine immediately if they win, if their tandem wins, the Bongo can easily just,
Ay, mag-quit na lang ko. Diba? Actually, so being an IT guy, when I was in high school, I was one of those people who represented Region 7 in a national programming competition. So I was really very much in the computer programming back then. So I look at all these algorithms and stuff, and I do flow charting. So I made a flow chart. I don't know if you saw that. I know you were in Pico de Loro last week, so
Yeah.
you probably didn't see it, but I wrote about it. I made I made a, what do you call this, a flow chart which shows how can someone have unlimited terms as president. It's possible under the 1987 Constitution. It's possible. It's perfectly possible to have unlimited terms. I call it unli terms as president, and it's possible. So you run first as president and do a good job for 6 years, and when you're done with your 6 years, you can no longer run as president, but you can run as vice president. And
Right.
you have to run as vice president and let someone in your team, someone you really trust, run as president. And in your campaign, you make it very clear to everyone that they need to vote the tandem. So you and your presidential running mate right? And you
Your
basically
placeholder.
wink. Yeah, your placeholder. Indeed, and you wink at your audience, at your supporters who are, let's say, a huge number of people, and you tell them, you wink at them, and by the way, this is your way of making me continue my plans. And then everyone is going to say, yeah, let's do it, because you're a well-loved president, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. And then people will vote for you and your president, your presidential running mate. And then when both of you win, a few days before inauguration, your trusted aide says, "Oops, I don't want to do it. I quit. I'll let my boss handle it." So on day one, okay, on inauguration day, you get inaugurated as president because you succeeded into the presidency, because the president-elect quit. The president-elect resigned before even taking office, and you never serve a single day as vice president, right? So on your so-called second term, you ran as vice president, which is perfectly permitted by the 1987 Constitution, that the stupid idiots who don't know anything about technical IT logic stuff, which we IT people know a lot about, right? That's why abogagos will always lose against people like us. Basically, if you're a logical, scientific person, engineer type, algorithm type of person, you'll always beat the abogago, because the abogago will try to twist the logic, and then you will always be able to say, "Look, you're twisting logic." You'll point it out, and then he will look like a fool. So that's what's happening to Monsod. Everybody knows he's a fucking idiot. So is Drilon, So what happens is first term president, second term run as VP, but do not serve a single day as VP. Immediately you become president, and then you can do the same again. And then because you can't run again as president, so you run again as vice president, and you have another person, or maybe the same guy, run again as president. And you can do this ad nauseam. You can do this over and over again.
This is no different from having Dino, the now USEC of the DILG,
Yeah.
Dino,
Yes, indeed.
as the parang what's the
Placeholder.
word
He was the placeholder.
yeah, marag proxy ba sa
Proxy,
presidente.
yeah.
But the thing is, Orion, you have to go through all that just so you can continue your
term.
your term, and of course your plans for the country.
Yeah.
And
Oh, by
if
the
you've
way,
been,
but the reason why I said, so if you recall, there is a text in the Constitution that says you cannot serve more than 2 terms, more than 2 consecutive terms, or 2 successive terms as vice president. But in this situation where you never served a single day as vice president, because your running mate immediately quit even before inauguration date. So nadaog mo, you won the election, and then 2 weeks before inauguration date, he quits. So immediately, president ka. So you never got to serve as vice president. Therefore, that text in Article 7 that says no vice president who has served more than 2 successive terms can run again for a re-election. You can run again because you never served as VP. You see, this is the thing about people about these stupid abogagos. They will come up with text, and then they'll try to reinterpret stuff. But then we technical people will basically be able to say, "Fuck you. We know what you're trying to do, and you can't just change the text because the text says served as vice president." Well, fuck you. He didn't serve. This person is not serving a single day as vice president. So hindi siya pasok dun sa two terms only as vice president, because he never served a single day as vice president. So unlimited terms as president by running for vice president over and over again.
I can see this being something that is possible, Orion, no? If the president were gago,
Indeed. Indeed.
But syempre may mga
Pero pag nakakapagod, di ba? It's like you have to go through this charade.
And he's old.
Yeah.
Kapoy na ba?
So,
I mean, 6 years of his presidency.
Indeed. Actually,
You can
we
tell
know that actually what's going to happen here is obviously it's all dependent also on whether you're still strong enough to continue. So, I mean, obviously, this is something that could work for someone who is, let's say, in his 40s. Let's say someone who is in his 40s, he can do a few of these terms, right? But we're basically just pointing out that is the algorithm of the 1987 Constitution. So why the fuck did these idiots design it that way, that you have to do this? Why not just allow a good president to continue to run anyway?
Alam mo, Ryan,
That's the thing.
Yung mga sinasabi mo, it got me thinking really hard about our situation here, because first, it got me thinking that it's very important, or the merit of having to change the system of government that we have. Kasi tama ka. I mean, if you have a good president, we wouldn't have to be, doing all these. We don't have to go through all the trouble to circumvent the current constitution.
Exactly.
If it were a parliamentary system, because if the president is doing really well, no, he's gonna be there like as much as as many years.
31 years for Lee Kuan Yew. 22 years in the
31.
first. 22 years in the stint of the first stint of Mahathir Mohamad, or the case of Angela Merkel. She's like been more than 15 years in Germany as chancellor.
As chancellor.
Yeah. So
it-
it's like ganun eh. Parang why are we destroying the essence of having continuous good leadership? Well, I mean, that's the problem of the people who wrote the 1987 Constitution. They did not do their research. The only other countries that have term limits for, the way we do it, like we don't allow successive terms for president and all that stuff, are countries in Latin America. Other banana fucking republics. Banana republics. Basically, the only other countries that have term limits, the same way that we do in the Philippines, are fellow banana republics in Latin America.
Problema mo gid, Orion, reactionary magud ang 1987 Constitution. They were so adamant to parang move away from or escape the past of the Marcos regime. They didn't want the same thing to happen, like the same strongman ruling the country for decades. That's why they really they thought that the only mechanism they can put in place is the term limits that would dissuade people from actually, or prevent from something like that happening again. The problem is, if we have a good leader, somebody who is really doing his job, like President Duterte, people are thinking right now, oh my gosh, he's in a year's time, it's going to be over. What's going to happen to the gains that we've reached at this point? And ang dami na niyang nagawa. Yung kanyang build projects, infrastructure, the economy. Tanggalin mo yung pandemic, we were doing really well. And then, of course, the peace and order situation, which is the most important thing in the minds of most people. That's why it's so popular. Ano mangyayari? Kasi tapos na yung kanyang term, hindi na siya pwedeng bumalik. That's why people are thinking immediately, who would be the next best person to have continuity in the programs of this government? Then Inday comes to the picture. That's why itong mga opposition, they can't believe na ano ba to? Bakit ba gusto nila ng di ba? Ayaw natin ng dynasty. Bakit biglang ganito, pamilya, father and then daughter? And the reason being, people recognize Davao City as an example of what went on. Like good governance happened in Davao City. You have the father and then the daughter taking over, and look at Davao now. It's so progressive.
Actually, so this is one of the things that a lot of Filipinos need to understand. One of our biggest problems as a people is a lot of our political scientists and lawyers, and I don't mean all, but a lot. They just really had the wrong idea about term limits and all that. They didn't realize, they didn't do any research to find out what happened in other countries. As it
Ay,
turns out,
kilala ko yan, yung favorite mo, si JAVAD. Si JAVAD yun.
yes, it's JAVAD. Now, JAVAD has been proven wrong by a lot of research done internationally, particularly by two main international, basically non-Filipino political scientists who have done research, extensive research on the Philippines. And they have shown that when you put those term limits, doon naggrabe yung mga dynasty. So one guy is a Colombian, and he's a Colombian. So es colombiano, es por eso que quiere saber mucho sobre lo que pasó en Filipinas. The guy, because he's from a country that is also like a banana republic kind of thing, he was so interested to understand, what do we, as a Colombian, this guy wanted to understand what do we in Latin America need to know to avoid the problems of other countries. And so he looked at his cousin country. I mean, we're brother countries, the Philippines and Colombia. And he looked at the Philippines and he saw the biggest evidence of how we ended up having the worst kinds of dynasties. And he said, and in his research, it's very clear. It's because of the term limits that we exacerbated the dynasty problem. So essentially, in the old system of the 1935 Constitution, we did not have that many dynasties. We did not. We had a few, okay? So, but when we did have a few dynasties, they were thin dynasties. So when you say thin dynasties, means hindi sila sabay-sabay, sunod-sunod. So in the old system of the 1935 Constitution, you would have a mayor who would serve for X number of terms. Basically, he would keep on getting reelected. Let's say he would have 5 terms. Paulit-ulit siyang elected. 5 terms or 6 or 7 terms, And then when he gets really tired, he totally quits. As in like, I'm pagod na ako eh. So I'll quit and then someone from the family will take over. Okay? And that is the only person in the family who will take over. No one else. Under the 1987 Constitution, because we instituted the three-term limit, so three years each, diba? 3 years each. One term is 3 years, so 3 terms only, so 9 years. After 9 years, the guy who is mayor decides, okay, I can't run again, so I will run as vice mayor, and my son or daughter or wife will run as mayor. So, sabay sila. So you ended up having fat dynasties, right? Nagkaroon tayo ng fat dynasties because of the 1987 Constitution, and this is the research done by Pablo Querubin. And then there is another person, Dr. Pablo Querubin, another one who is a friend of mine, a personal friend of mine, Dr. Yuko Kasuya. She's Japanese, and she basically did research also again about term limits, and the term limits for the presidency is what totally destroyed our party system in the Philippines. Ang dami nating parties. Instead of like before, we used to have only two main parties, nacionalista and liberal. Now we have like sang katutak na, like, 10 parties at the same time, and like basically it's like sobrang dami, right?
So paano yun, Orion? Yung best friend mo nga si JAVAD, ang dami na namang sinasabi sa kanyang sa
yan,
kanyang Twitter.
Isa pa yan. So si JAVAD, isa pa yan.
Ano pa nga ito sabi niya, I've read all the classics of Dr. Fukuyama. Wala namang sinasabi mo.
He clearly hasn't read, this book, for example. This book is by Francis Fukuyama. And several times in this book, Dr. Francis Fukuyama says parliamentary systems are better. And then there's this other book, I forgot the origins of political order, and I forgot the other one. But he has another book pretty much on the same theme about political order and disorder yata yun, parang ganun. And political order and decay. I think that was the name of the book. And that's a book that laging refer ni JAVAD. And he said, oh, I've read all his books and he never said that. And yung pala, paulit-ulit niyang sinasabi, mas maganda ang parliamentary. And there you go. See, Dr. Francis Fukuyama, in this book, in the favorite book that JAVAD likes to talk about, in many of his articles, in many of his verbal interviews, he always says parliamentary is better. So, pahiya na naman si JAVAD. Pahiya talaga si JAVAD. As in, talagang supalpal talaga siya. And then si JAVAD, nagsabi pa yan dati, just a few days ago, he said, lahat daw ng kaya nga may term limits in democracies para walang pa-monarchy effect as in. Well, guess what? The majority of the world's best performing democracies do not have term limits.
Term limits.
May term limits ba? Tingnan natin yung mga top countries dun sa democracy index. Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, mga ganyan, Netherlands, Australia, Canada, Finland, ano pa ba? Basta marami sila, New Zealand, lahat yung mga bansang yan, wala, zero. Walang term limits. Walang term limits. Pwede ang mga, kunyari ikaw, naging legislator ka, member of parliament ka, part ka sa parliament, only terms ka. And then, when you become prime minister, only terms ka. Only terms talaga sila sa mga bansa na yan. So, in all of these countries na the top performing countries in the world, according to the Economist Intelligence Unit Democracy Index ranking list, okay? You just look it up. Go to Google, look for Democracy Index. Okay? You will see that the top countries, top 10 for example, lahat yan, mga bansa na yan, marami sa kanila, Scandinavian countries and Nordic countries, puro walang mga term limits yan. So ano itong sinasabi niya? Kaya nga may term limits in democracies. Sino yung mga bansang may mga term limits? Puro mga presidentialist countries, like Philippines, or like yung mga Colombia, yung mga maraming drugs, yung mga Mexico, ganyan. Puro mga Latino countries. Mga banana republic countries. Okay? And then also in the US also, they also have term limits. And look at the US, ang gulo-gulo na ngayon. In fact, the US is the worst in terms of dynasties among all of the G7 countries. Sa lahat ng mga top Western countries in the world, US is the worst of them in terms of yung mga democracy ratings, yung mga corruption ratings. They're not doing that well. So actually,
yung idea, Orion, basically yung check and balance, yung hiwalay ang legislature, ang judiciary from the executive department, yung pagiging separate from each other.
Bulok.
Hindi talaga siya nagwo-work.
It doesn't work.
Especially sa atin, 'di ba? Kasi ang legislature natin very dependent on who's the president kasi they can't get
pork barrel funds
if they are not aligned with the president. So ganun din, useless. Walang check and balance. Correct.
Oo. So
Tapos,
actually ganito kasi I'll also explain, no. Ang original intention talaga was to have a strict separation of executive and legislative. However, during the time of Cory, so ginawa nila yon, di ba? Nagkaroon ng... So si Marcos kasi, he created a system, yung kanyang system niya na parang hyper-presidentialism that looks like a semi-presidential system that kind of made parang they almost fused the legislative and the executive. So parang may pagka harmonious ng konti yung dealings between the executive and legislative. Di ba? Now, pagdating nung 1987 Constitution, edi nagawa si Tita Cory ng bago, 'di ba? And in this particular system na bago, talagang separate yung executive and the legislative. Laging nag-aaway ang executive and the legislative. So nagkakaroon lagi ng bangayan, nagkakaroon ng parang gridlock ang tawag diyan. And that gridlock was the trigger for many coup d'etat attempts. Kasi nakikita ng mga military na iba dyan, yung mga RAM boys, yung sinahunasan natin Nakita nila, nagkakabangayan na naman. Instability yan. Tara, pasok tayo. So, parang pag nakikita nila may gulo, pasok tayo kasi we can it's unstable eh. So, after so many attempts that happened, yung government ni Cory biglang nagkaroon ng idea na para wala ng gulo, para wala ng kudeta, para wala na yung mga bangayan ng executive and legislative. Let's create a system that will force the legislature to kowtow to us. That will force the legislature to bow to the executive branch.
You're saying pork barrel was invented by the Cory administration?
Yes, that's when they started the countrywide CWD
Development Fund.
Yes, CWF, Countrywide Development Fund, CWDF. See, or CDF, so Countrywide Development Fund, which later got renamed into PDAF, so Priority Development. So that was the origin of the mega pork barrel. Okay, it was because of the 1987 Constitution under Cory na nagkaroon ng gulo, nagkaroon ng maraming gridlock, nag-aaway yung executive and legislative, tapos nilagyan ng sweetener para ma-force yung na mag-comply para hindi na sila manggugulo. So ngayon, dahil sa pork, naging masunurin ang
pero
legislature.
natigil yan sa time ni Pinoy, di ba? Kasi the Supreme Court decided that this is illegal. So they removed pork butt.
So they just changed the form, but it's still there. So you still have budget prioritizations. You still have certain. It's just done in a slightly different way, but it's still there. It's still there.
So ito pa lang, Orion, if you look at the faults of the 87 Constitution, even we can go as far as the United States Constitution, where our Constitution was poorly patterned after. And talagang maraming loopholes na it breeds corruption talaga because it's may interdependency that between the legislature and the executive department. Intrinsic yun, at the same time talagang hindi maiwasan na gamitin sa politika yung pera, yung kamay ng bayan.
Yes.
And which results to yun nga, na-delay yung mga projects dahil wait a minute, hindi naman natin kaalyado tong gobernador ng isang probinsya. Wag natin pondohan tong project diyan. Saka na yan lagyan ng kahit na sa master plan ng NEDA, kung hindi kaalyado ng presidente ay hindi popondohan yung proyekto. So which has been a very really bad problem for our government for the last 30 years since the 1987 Constitution. And it's only now, since buti na lang meron tayong presidente who doesn't care much about the politics that goes on. Ang sa kanya, he wants to accomplish so much. So that's why talagang lahat yung mga naisip na proyekto ay tinapos niya at gumawa pa siya ng mga panibago. Ang problema dyan, Orion, we're too dependent on a personality who has the right demeanor, the right the right characteristics to make sure that the country progresses. Paano kung wala ng President Duterte type? Biglang may manalo na balik na naman sa dati. Start from scratch. From scratch na naman tayo.
Urong-sulong, yun ang problema ng Pilipinas dahil hindi tayo nag-parliamentary system. Urong-sulong lagi tayo. For us to be able to become like Singapore or Malaysia man lang, you need continuous growth Continuous na parang yung consistent and continuous na na forward motion. Kung laging urong-sulong, walang nangyayari. Para bang mangyayari dyan 5 steps forward tapos 4 steps back. Para bang isa lang yung tapos konti lang. Sobrang bagal kasi diretso ka tapos bigla na lang the next term may bago na namang papasok na babalik ta rin yung ginawa mo. So parang yun nga, nasasayang, 'di ba? Kung sana dire-diretso, wala namang masama. Sa France nga dati, yung president nila si Mitterrand, nakailang terms yun ng in office. Si François Mitterrand.
Itong tanong, Orion, based on your studies sa mga parliamentary system all over the world, paano I'm sure meron din sila naging mga prime minister na walang kwenta. At how easy is it for someone to say, na parang, okay, wait a minute, tigil muna.
It's very easy. It's very
No
easy. And secondly,
confidence. How can somebody
Yeah.
file a no confidence na resolutions from the House?
So it's very easy. So actually ganito, just to clarify na rin, usually nga, never sila nagkakaroon ng walang kwentang leader. So
talaga.
nangyayari, magagaling yung leader, tapos nagkaroon siya ng konting pagkakamali, pwede siyang matanggal. So parang nagkaroon siya ng malaking pagkakamali, tapos wala siyang way out para ayusin yung pagkakamali na yon. Usually, papalitan siya ng sarili niyang partido. Hindi na nga kinakailangan. Pati nga mismong parang yung sinasabing no confidence, hindi na nga aabot dun eh. Kasi dun sa sariling partido, sila mismo magsasabi, mukhang nahihirapan na yata si Manong or si Kuya or si Tito. Nahihirapan na siya. So, siguro kailangan natin siyang ipa-retire. So, let's let someone else handle it. So, that's what happens. Naputol yata. Teka lang. Hello?
Ayan.
Ayan.
Hindi kasi
Okay.
ang worry natin, well, something like that happened in Malaysia, 'di ba? Meron silang corrupt na
Yeah,
prime minister.
so for example, in the case of Malaysia, to be honest, this guy was actually also quite good. Si Najib Razak was himself actually competent also. He was competent. But he actually ended up having friends who had some weird stuff going on. He has a wife who also had some weird stuff going on with the money related stuff. So parang dun nasira. So magaling sana siya. And then nagkaroon ng ganyang mga problema. So nung nalaman yun, na-confirm yun siguro, sabihin natin 2015, dun naging klaro yung mga problems. By 2018, wala na siya. Natanggal na voted out siya kasi nagkaroon ng mas magandang partido galing sa labas na opposition party na pumalit sa kanilang because what happened? Because the ruling party or the ruling coalition did not replace him. He became a liability to that party, which was the ruling party at that point in time. Naging liability siya sa kanila. Kaya pagdating ng election, talo sila nitong mas magaling na partido. So that's the reason why, yun yung incentive, bakit yung partido na ruling party, bakit nila babaguhin yung leader? Kasi kung hindi nila ginawa yan, magmumukha silang masamang tao. Magmumukhang masama yung buong partido. So parang tumor yan eh. Pag may mali dun may tumor kang tanggalin mo yung tumor para ikaw buhay ka. Ito, ganun siya. Pag yung leader mo biglang may problema at mukhang kailangan tanggalin nyo siya. Otherwise, yung buong partido yung masisira.
So, ang ibig mong sabihin, Orion, mahirap i-circumvent yung parliamentary system. Kumbaga, kunyari, if you're the ruling party and everybody happy, yan ang parating nangyayari sa gobyerno eh. Just make everyone happy, get their fair share of the pie, and then chances are you can stay in power for as long as you like.
No, it's not possible because when people can sense that something is wrong, then there's going to be brewing discontent. And when there's brewing discontent, it becomes a fuel for the opposition parties to improve themselves. And when they improve themselves to the point that they become winnable, tanggal kayo.
Can't the ruling party sort of like do all this? Kasi 'di ba, alam mo naman, merong mga countries where the experience was much was talagang delikado yung mga opposition, either pinapapatay or alam mo yun, yung talagang may abuse of power going on. Does that happen in the parliament?
And that kind of thing you're talking about happens in presidential systems. Yung mga nasa Africa, tsaka sa Latin America, tsaka pati sa Pilipinas. Presidential system. Parliamentary systems, pati third world parliamentary systems, halos konting-konti yung patayan.
Okay. That's
nasa studies yan ni na Fred Riggs at saka ni The late Dr. Fredericks, the late Dr. Juan Lintz, these kinds of things, yung mga democratic, yung mga coup d'etat, marami pag presidential. Halos very few, very rare sa parliamentary. Patayan, marami sa presidential. So, ang nangyayari kasi sa loob ng parliament, meron laging discussion, may laging debate, 'di ba? And the opposition will always have the right to bring up the paperwork showing may anomalya dito sa expense reports ninyo, blah blah blah. Ganun lang talaga.
And saka nabasa ko nga, Orion, yung na, di ba, you were very happy that one of the bloggers actually presented something. She wrote something on about the parliamentary system, si Sas. And actually ended up reading it earlier. And then it's interesting because itong ang problema nga natin, di ba, karamihan sa mga supporters ni Presidente, kaya nagagalit sa opposition kasi ang opposition walang ginawa kundi magbunganga at magreklamo at they don't present any concrete alternative to what's happening. Sa parliamentary system, once the opposition does scrutinize a particular project, they do have like an alternative plan that might
They have to show it. They have to show it. Yes, they have to show their plan. In fact, kaya nga sa parliamentary system, you don't even need a very long campaign period because the campaign is already happening when you are in parliament. Pag kayo yung opposition, every time na dinidebate ninyo yung ruling party, kayo yung opposition, kayo minority, yung majority, yung ruling party, lagi ninyong pinapakita na ito yung criticism namin sinasabi nyo kasi ito yung alternative namin na gusto namin. So parang in a way, lagi kayo nagka-campaign while you are debating against them. So pagdating na ng, let's say, nagkaroon ng snap election, hindi nyo na kinakailangan i-explain kung ano yung party platform nyo kasi madalas yun ang nilalabas, paulit-ulit yung nilalabas yung partido, yung platform nyo during yung mga debate. So ganon.
Sige, Orion, we're gonna read some of the messages here coming from our viewers. No, but before we do that, I just wanna take a short break here kasi pinopromote natin yung Game of Giants. Pinakita ko na yata to sa iyo, Orion. This is brought to you by Blueprint.ph. Merong initiative for voter education. The launch will happen on Monday via Zoom. 10 o'clock in the morning. If you guys are interested, you can join us. Itong Game of Giants, it's a card game. Para siyang NBA card game. But this time, we're gonna be, pitting polycards against each other. Polycards are the cards of your favorite politicians. So yun yung ating ginagawa ngayon at gusto nating panoorin sana yung video. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, please do check this one out. Ito, Orion, panoorin natin.
Lala ang iyong politiko. Nagagampanan ba niya ang kanyang tungkulin? Binoto mo ba siya dahil magaling siya? O dahil kilala ang kanyang pangalan? Gusto mo ba siya dahil todo ang kanyang serbisyo? O dahil todo bigay siya, kumanta at sumayaw sa entablado? Wala nang hihigit pa sa tamang kaalaman upang maiahon natin ang sarili sa kahirapan. Kapag sinuportahan ang tamang politiko, sigurado gaganda rin ang buhay mo. Dito papasok ang bagong online game na Game of Giants. Paraan ito na lumalim ang ating pagkakakilala sa ating mga public servant. Pataasan ng score. The more ang accomplishment, mas mataas ang ranking. Paano laruin? I-download ang mga polycard ng paborito mong politiko. Nakasulat sa polycard ang kanilang social media scores. Dito malalaman kung malakas ang hatak nila. Pero mas importante ay dito mo rin matutulungan ang kandidato mo sa pag-share ng kanilang accomplishments sa pamamagitan ng social media posts. The more factual information ang pinapakalat mo, mas malaki ang chance na tataas sa Game of Giants leaderboard ang kandidato mo. Simulan mag-post ngayon at itag ang blueprint.ph #GameOfGiantsPH. The higher the engagement, the more chances to win. Get your polycards now by visiting blueprint.ph. Giant ba ang kandidato mo? Tara, laro tayo ng Game of Giants. Let's pick the right card, ha? The right people to serve us for a better Philippines.
Alright, ayun. Orion, yung Game of
Okay.
Giants.
Okay, nice.
Kung habang wala pang hindi pa natin nababago yung ating saligang batas, ay gumagawa tayo ng paraan para simula sa voter education dahil ang isang problema natin talaga kaya hindi nahirapan tayong galawin ng 1987 Constitution, Orion, is dahil sa kakulangan ng impormasyon at yung understanding sa importansya ng pagbago ng konstitusyon. So I think we can start by helping people, the majority of our population, to be more educated when it comes to voting for candidates or voting for politicians in the next election. What do you think about
Yun.
that, Orion?
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
So we have comments here about our topic. Sabi ni John David, 18 out of 24 senators required for RBH2 to pass. So is it still possible? Nakita naman natin, Orion, delix tayo kasi yung lumabas na 12 senators nga na gustong maglabas ng inquiry about trolls. Mukhang ito rin yung mga grupo na magkakaproblema tayo sa pagpasa ng RBH2 sa Senado. Anong sa tingin mo, Orion? May problema ba tayo sa Senado at this point?
Well, and it's like this. As long as mangyayari ang RBH2 deliberations in the Senate, at as long as masama ako bilang resource person, especially now na wala ang ating idol na si the late Secretary Gary Olivar, since he's not around, then someone will have to step in his shoes, and I would like to be the one to help do that. Because we think the same way and we have the same arguments. If I can be given a chance to speak and explain why we need to get rid of those anti-foreign direct investment restrictions, very likely mahihiya sila na kumontra doon because magmumukha silang tanga. Kung sino man ang niisa sa mga senador na kukontra, kasi I will word it such that any one of you who goes against this particular resolution at hindi nyo gagawin para dumami ang mga foreign direct investors sa Pilipinas dahil kumontra kayo sa panukalang ito, kayo ang mga taong gustong manatiling malayo sa pamilya ang mga OFW. Kayo ang mga tao na gustong manatiling walang trabaho ang maraming Pilipino.
That's fair. That's fair because
pahihiyain ko talaga ang mga parang I'm going to say kapag hindi nyo ginawa to, antay kayo sa Pilipino.
Yeah, ultimately kasi kaya nga natin gusto baguhin yung constitution dahil gusto natin magkaroon ng mas maraming investors dito sa Pilipinas. Kaya gusto natin na tanggalin yung mga restrictions ng economic restrictions para pumasok yung mga foreign investors at dumami yung mga trabaho. Pero Orion, anong masasabi mo doon sa comment na na meron naman daw tayong yung manufacturing daw natin pwedeng 100% foreign owned?
Oh, so ganito kasi. Long ago sa mga 1970s, 1980s, ang mga kumpanya na galing sa labas na pupunta sa Pilipinas, manufacturing sila. Okay? So they will do everything. Yung isang kumpanya na yan, manufacturing, tas ang dami nilang ginagawa. But, in the 1990s, nagbago na ang global business. You no longer have a single company doing everything.
Right.
You now have an entourage of companies. So, pag sinabi natin Apple, imbitahin natin yung Apple na mag-set up ng factory sa Pilipinas. Tapos aprobado. Oh, papasok si Apple. Si Apple, hindi yan mag-isang papasok. Magdadala yan. Papasok si Apple, sila yung magse-set up ng intellectual property, parang representative office about the intellectual properties of Apple. So yung mga plano, design, and then they will turn around and say, oh, Foxconn. You know Foxconn, right?
Yeah, pasok ka dito.
Foxconn is their primary subcontractor. Foxconn, pasok ka dito. Ikaw ngayon yung main executor ng mga yung mga plano natin. Kami ang may-ari ng design, pero kayo ang gagawa. 'Di ba? Tapos kukuha sila ng isang company na yung payroll company nila, HR company nila na dun sa States na pasok, set up kayo ng HR processing company dito kasi kayo yung nag-handle ng payroll namin. Yung accounting company na sige, pasok kayo dito sa Pilipinas. So, ang style ng business ngayon, hindi yung si Apple mag-isang papasok. Hindi. Yun yung dati. That's the old way of doing things. 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, ganun. Pagdating ng 1990s, nagkaroon na sila ng outsourcing trend. So, naging yung kaya nga iba talaga kapag nanggaling ka sa multinational company. Galing ako multinational company. I work for a multinational company. I've worked for so many multinational companies. I've seen how it's done.
Right.
When I was working with Microsoft is there, and then they have all these other companies that are doing, may Datacom na that handles yung mga user support. Tapos there's parang ang dami-daming other companies na parang tawag nito, yung nakadikit. So, ngayon, pag papasok ang isang global company doon sa isang bansa, hindi siya mag-isa. He's the anchor company, tapos ang daming nakadikit sa kanyang other companies na sabay papasok sa bansa. Now, who is the only so-called manufacturing company na nakasign dyan? Apple will be the one, yung signatory. But then, dala-dala niya yung kanyang entourage. Ngayon, pagdating ng 1987 Constitution, HR company kayo, hindi naman kayo kasama dun sa 100% na dapat meron kayong 60% Filipino company. Kayo accounting company na So doon mangyayari yung problem. So maaaring ang Apple okay. Maaaring yung Foxconn okay. Pero yung other subsidiary ancillary companies
Right.
na nasa loob ng entourage hindi pasok. So ano mangyayari? Para yung pamilya. Para silang pamilya na gustong pumasok sa isang country club, 'di ba? Tapos yung buong tawag nito,
angkan.
family, buong angkan gustong pumasok. Tapos yung isang anak nakasulat dun sa malaking dapat laging nakasapatos at saka bawal ang shorts, bawal sando. Tapos yung isang bata naka-shorts, sando and tsinelas lang. Tapos, sinabihan ng guard, sir, yung isa yung nakasulat dito, hindi pwede yung naka-shorts, sando, at tsinelas, hindi pwede. Yung isa ninyong kasama, hindi pwede. So, tapos gagayan sila, hindi na lang kami papasok. Kasi kung hindi nyo papapasukin yung isa naming anak, hindi na lang kami, lahat kami hindi papasok.
Okay.
Diba? Yun na nangyayari. Kaya
makes
nga,
sense.
diba? Of course, we know this because we work in the corporate world. But then, all those abogagos and all these other people who have absolutely zero understanding of global business, hulelat. Kaya nga yung mga bosses na mga katulad kong OFW or people who've worked in global businesses, kailangan kami mapakinggan Kasi alam namin to Pero ito mga wala talagang kaalam-alam about global companies. Wala. I mean, you ask even Elon Musk, even Tesla. Tesla does not do everything by themselves. You look at Tesla, Tesla, they have the design and probably they also do the actual manufacturing certain things. But they have other non-core activities that's done by other companies that they outsource to.
It's never one thing. It's never just manufacturing. When somebody, a big corporation comes in, they're not just a manufacturing company coming in.
Yes.
It's an entourage.
An entourage.
And how about the utilities? Kasi is that still 60-40, diba? In the provisions of the economic provisions of the Constitution. Are the utilities allowed to be 100% foreign owned?
From what I recall, no, they're not allowed. So I don't know if there's now this. I remember now, parang there's a Public Service Act that they're trying to do. Parang they will redefine certain utilities as not being members of the domain or the range of parang yung category of public service companies. So, ito hindi na siya considered public service company. So, hindi na siya pasok dun sa 60-40. Parang gano'n. Parang they're trying to make a circumvention. Yun yung ginagawa ng
kasi
iba.
mahal ng ating kuryente dito sa Pilipinas eh. One of the most expensive in the entire world. And the reason being, it's monopolized. Meron talagang, it's just one huge company operating for each province. Sa Metro Manila, it's Meralco, di ba? And and they can just dictate It's funny because I've seen complaints on social media during the pandemic at nakikita nila doon. Syempre lumalabas rin yung earnings ng yearly earnings ng annual earnings ng isang company, di ba? And Meralco kumikita. Ang Maynilad kumikita. Ang Manila Water kumikita. Pero ang mga Pilipino naghihirap. So, doon pa lang naisip nila, bakit ang mahal-mahal ng kuryente at hinahayaan natin silang kumita, taghirap mahirap ang panahon, wala tayong magagawa kasi isa lang yung kumpanya na nagsaserve sa atin ng utilities. Tama ba yung analogy dyan, Orion?
Yes. So we need more providers. We need competition.
And the only way to do that is to really open up the economy, and it has to start with the Constitution. Sabi ni Gray Mendez, ang Pilipinas ay kinopya ang US system. Tingnan mo ang US ngayon, ang gulo. Wala na yung American dream. Magulo din ang Pinas. Mas maganda talaga ang parliamentary na ginagamit ng mga EU countries.
Yun.
Tama ka dyan. At sabi ni Daniel Daito, let's hope that GMA discussed constitutional reform with Sarah. Kasi
I hope so.
She's the leading candidate, diba?
Ako, ganito. So, yes, nagkaroon ako ng time na nag-criticize ako kay Sarah, but I had all the right to do so because being consistent. I mean, I'm pushing for constitutional reform. Tapos maririnig natin na isang tao dyan na originally gusto talaga sana natin biglang kumukontra, di ba? Kumukontra siya dati. So, ako, as I said, ever since, sabi ko, I am willing to change my stance if she says, I am now for constitutional reform. I was wrong before. Kung sasabihin niya, I was wrong before when I went against it, but now I have a better understanding of it. I am for it. Pag sinabi niya yan, ox, no problem.
Ayaw naman ni
Case
Sarah
closed.
lang talaga is yung meron siyang problema sa federalism, pero I don't think may problema siya sa parliamentary system or the other reforms that we're trying to
And I think
push
the
for.
problem with the federalism part is hindi niya rin naintindihan na actually kapag nagkaroon ka ng parliamentary, mawawala yung issue na yung kanyang ini-issue na in fact, pag nagkaroon ng parliamentary at naging bukas tayo sa foreign investors, mawawala yung dynasty na yan na sinasabi niya sa mga warlords na issue na yan. Kasi pag dumami ang mga mayayaman, pag dumami ang mga middle class doon sa mga probinsya, wala na yung mga taong uto-uto or yung lagi naghihingi ng pera sa mga rich politicians at nagkakaroon sila ng utang na loob. Mawawala yun because everybody becomes independent-minded, everyone becomes self-assured. As ordinary middle-class people, hindi na sila nadadala agad ng mga false promises.
Ito,
diba?
sabi ni JATC Ibarra, Ma'am Clarita Carlos, yung idol mo. Orion, bad trip na naman sa new about face sa political dito sa ating walang ideology. Kasi yung political reforms medyo is taking a back seat dahil nga these are the last reforms that our lawmakers would wanna get into. This will directly affect them. Kunyari, anti-balimbing law, yung sinatawag nating presidential tandem, president and vice president should come from the same party. And the problem with having the problem with focusing on parties is we don't really have a strong party system here in the Philippines. Anyone can just move from one party and another, and ideology is not even part of the discussions.
And that's the thing, kasi there's that research so diba I talked about two political scientists earlier who did research about term limits. So one of them, so I said Pablo Querubin, who is from Colombia, And Pablo Querubin basically said na it was because of the introduction of term limits in the Philippines that the incidence of political dynasties worsened. So at hindi lang worsened, naging fat dynasties pa. Okay? Now, another person was in Japanese, she's from Keio University. So she's a personal friend of mine, si Dr. Yuko Kasuya. She wrote a book called Presidential Bandwagon, Parties and Party Systems in the Philippines. And her focus was about yung paglagay ng term limits sa president. And dahil doon, nung nagkaroon ng term limit sa president, naging magulo yung party system ng Pilipinas. Hindi na tayo, kasi dati sa 1935 Constitution, although presidential din siya, but because the president could run for re-election, there was less of the fragmentation of parties. Right now, dahil sa pagiging tawag nito, parang kumbaga one shot deal lagi ang presidente. 6 years lang. After the 6 years, tapos ka na, hindi ka na pwede, 'di ba? So dahil hindi nakakapag-run for re-election yung presidente, yung nangyayari, ang dami-daming nagra-run na ibang na different people, and each of them have their own party. Each of them. So ang dami-daming partidong nagsusulputan. Whereas long ago, we only had 2 main parties. So, yun yung difference eh. So, when we had no term limits, as in only terms ang mga ordinaryong mga mayor, mga kongresista, senador, may continuity. Tapos ang president pwedeng mag-run for re-election, may continuity. Yung parties, long-term yung view ng mga parties. Eh ngayon, short-term lang ang viewpoint ng parties is always 6 years lang. Only hanggang 6 years lang. Ganon ang nangyayari sa Pilipinas.
Alam mo ba, ang aking big takeaway dito sa ating conversation ngayon, parang ano lang ito eh. It's like having a family member na medyo may suffering from cancer. Na nasa early stages. And it's obvious the solution to this family member's problem is to change his lifestyle. And one of the things that you have to change is to eat healthy. And the problem with our system right now, it's not eating healthy. We need to change the way we we are going about our business in government. And it has to start with what we feed it, which is basically the type of system that we are running at the moment. And the system that we're running at the moment is the reason why it's metastasizing. Kaya paulit-ulit yung problema natin. Parang vicious cycle na tinatawag. Dahil we are not veering away from a broken system. And yun ang hindi nare-realize ng karamihan sa ating mga kababayan dahil mahirap pag-usapan napaka-komplikado. At marami, at saka yung sinasabi mo nagmamarunong, yung mga pilingero, yung mga kinakaasaran mo, Orion, na mga personalities ay tinitwist yung mga facts para lang i-maintain yung status quo. Kasi
para nakakainis talaga, nakakainis. Diba? I'll give you another example of how walang kwenta the party system of the Philippines is. Na parang sobrang short term mag-isip ng mga partido such that some parties will even go against their own party platform dahil gusto nilang kontrahin yung main one. I'll give you an example. Akbayan. Okay?
Anong ginawa ng Akbayan?
Akbayan was founded with the platform and the vision of having a vibrant, democratic, multi-party, federal parliamentary system. Akbayan. Akbayan wants to have a federal parliamentary system. That's according to their charter, their founding charter by Walden Bello, Dr. Walden Bello, and other friends. Yes,
it's written in their charter.
You Google Akbayan Party. Makita nyo, Akbayan Party List, Akbayan Party, Citizens Democratic, whatever ganyan.
Bakit sila kumukontra?
Makikita mo na dun sa kanilang Facebook page, nakasulat dun. We stand for, ito yung nakasulat. Akbayan stands for, ito. November 3, 2020, nakasulat dun sa kanilang Akbayan Party List FB group. Akbayan Party List FB group. Number 5, what is Akbayan's socialist vision for the Philippines? Akbayan stands for a vibrant, multi-party, parliamentary, and federal form of government. It advocates for the free and open participation in genuine elections and other forms of democratic engagements as opposed to one-party rule and dictatorships. So, kita mo, Akbayan stands for a vibrant, multi-party, parliamentary, and federal form of government. If you want, I'll send you the link and you can show it to everyone.
Yeah, sure.
I'll show it to you here. I'll send it to you in the private chat.
Don't you have a function there that can share your screen? Meron, alam ko, pwede ka mag-share screen, Orion.
Yeah, I can pala. I can. So, teka.
Check mo.
I can share
Kung
the
hindi,
screen.
Kung hindi ako mag-share, walang problema.
Sige, I can share screen. I want to know which screen I can share. How do I know which one it is? Ito. Okay, kita ba ninyo to? Ito, share screen.
Share
Kikita
mo
nyo ba?
Ayan.
Oh. So ito, Akbayan stands for a vibrant, multi-party, parliamentary, and federal form of government. Galing ito sa kanilang website. Sa kanilang, Akbayan Party List Facebook group. Pero, ito, Akbayan Solon, ito si Representative Barry Gutierrez spoke with Filipino senior citizens. Tapos sinulat, federalism could break up the Philippines into smaller states that could be more susceptible to China's influence. Bullshit! Parang
ginagawa nilang what do you do when you want yung parang the bogeyman.
Bogeyman.
Ang China. Diba ang China ginagawa ng bogeyman?
Lagi nilang ginagawa ang bogeyman ng China. Okay, look at this. Akbayan Party List, October 7, 2015. Akbayan to Grace Po. Do not dismiss federalism. Ibig sabihin, ang pinapakita natin dito, Akbayan to Grace Po. Do not dismiss federalism. Akbayan Party List today cautioned presidential contender Grace Po against dismissing federalism. To 2015, pro-federalism ang Akbayan. See?
What happened to that? Ano sabi ng Grace Po?
Nangyari? So, I don't know what Grace Po said, but the point is, nung nakaupo na si pangalan nito, si si Risa Ontiveros. Risa Ontiveros did the voice of Candy during yung 1970s. We had this Candy. Okay? Candy yung Japanese cartoon, na anime cartoon.
Talaga
sa Pilipinas. Okay. Here's the story, no. Alam nyo yung mga Voltes 5, 'di ba? Voltes 5, Grandizer, ganyan. 'Di ba Japanese 'yan? Tapos may team ng mga Pilipino na sila yung nagdadub noon. Okay? Kaya nga, Voltes 5! Let's vote in! Imbis na, let's vote in! Let's vote in! Kasi Pinoy ang gumawa. Okay? Tapos, yung gumawa ng voice ni Candy, ay si Risa Ontiveros.
Talaga?
Alam mo sino nagkwento sa akin noon? Ang nagkwento sa akin noon si Lea Salonga. Si Lea Salonga nagkwento sa akin noon. Kasi nga, nasa Repertory Philippines sila dati. Kasama sila doon sa Sound of Music.
So meron palang ginawa si Ontiveros na nakakatuwa, no?
Oo. So si Ontiveros, siya, nung 2015 din yata yun tinanong kung ano yung mga stand ng mga gustong magsenador. Tapos yung tinatanong, ano yung tingin niyo sa federalism? I am for federalism. Ganyan siya. Federalism. Pero si Ontiveros, nung nakaupo na siya, umaalyado siya sa mga dilaw. So, yung mga dilaw, since Tita Cory, Noy, mga ayaw ng constitutional reform, sumasama siya dun sa kanila. Ganyan sila ka short term. Tapos, ito pa. ang Liberal Party, ha? Yung 1960s na Liberal Party, gusto ng federalism. Gusto ng parliamentary. Gusto ng tanggal 60-40. Yun ang original aim ng Liberal Party. Kaya nga liberal ang tawag sa kanila kasi liberalism. Yung liberalization of the economy, liberalization of politics. Mas liberal kasi, mas liberated yung politics ng parliamentary system. Pag federalism, mas liberal din kasi nga, pag ikaw dun sa region mo, gusto nyo ng ganito, tapos ayaw ng iba, kayo, at least you have your own way of doing things. So you are allowed to do it. Because in federalism, you should be allowed to have your own way of doing things based on your own context in your region. Ganon. Pero, binaboy ng yellow. Alam mo, ito I'll give you an example. The IT person ako, di ba? 2009, tinitingnan ko yung website ng Liberal Party.
Oo, napag-usapan natin to.
Liberal Party.
Yung sa Tagaytay
Liberal
tayo.
Party. Liberal.ph dati. Yung old nila na website, liberal.ph. Tapos pag tingnan mo sa parang main website nila, nandiyan yung lumang Liberal Party na emblem. Okay? Tapos nandun yung kanilang platform. We believe in liberalizing markets and allowing businesses to come in and more foreign investors. Ganun. More foreign investors. Tapos we believe in federalism and parliament. Ganun sila. Yun yung luma nilang website. Pagdating ng January 25 yata yun, 2010.
Ito yung nakalagay sa landing page ng ng liberal.ph.
Liberal Party. Pagdating ng mga January, malapit mag-February, biglang pagtingin ko, nagbago yung web. Parang pagtingin ko, liberal.ph. Parang nag-hang siya. Parang nag-hang ng 3 seconds, 4 seconds, ganyan. Parang, ang tagal Tagal mag-load Tapos biglang nagkaroon ng bagong landing page. Tapos nagbago yung URL niya. Hindi na siya liberal.ph. Naging liberal.org.ph. Parang nagbago yung liberal.ph. Biglang parang 3 seconds, tapos biglang nag-change siya. liberal.org.ph. Tapos, yung landing page niya, puro yellow na, puro laban sign, puro yellow ribbon, mukha ni Cory, mukha ni Ninoy, ganyan. Tapos, yung bago nilang plataforma, yung bago nilang slogan, wala na yung liberal markets, wala na. Ang kanila, walang mahirap pag walang corrupt. Yun ang binago na lahat. Pero medyo may pagka-hacker tayo. IT ako galing So, inuman ako, teka lang, hindi naman sigurong mawawala yun kasi bakit nandyan pa rin yung liberal.ph na parang nagkaroon ng 3-second delay. Sabi ko, try ko nga, liberal.ph/index.html or HTM. Pag enter ko, yung luma lumabas. Yung luma nandun pa rin. Nandun pa rin. So,
dapat na-screenshot mo yun, Orion.
alala ko na screenshot ko yun, pero sa luma akong computer na nag-crash yata. Luma computer na nag-crash. So anyway, but what I'm saying is, I witnessed that. And remember, ang Liberal Party dati yung 1990s Liberal Party, nandyan si Butch Abad. And si Butch Abad nagsulat ng article na magandang white paper, parang academic discussion, dissertation yung dating. Pro-parliamentary system, si Butch Abad.
So, yung sabihin, si Butch Abad kinain ng sistema.
Parang ganun. Ito pa.
Okay.
2008. 2008, the late Senate President became senator at that point in time, si Nene Pimentel, nagsulong ng federalism. Okay? Alam mo sino yung iilan sa mga co-author at saka co-sponsor?
Sino?
Nandyan si Noynoy, co-author si Noynoy, parang co-author si Noynoy. Tapos co-sponsor yan I think si Drilon, si Pangilinan, sino pa? Ang dami nila. Ang dami sa mga Liberal Party pro naman pala sa federalism. So, parang, ano ba kayo? Dati kayo, gusto nyo ng federalism, bigla na lang kayo, ayaw nyo dahil hindi nyo, parang, kumbaga, kontra kayo sa sino yung ano.
Pwede daw magbago ng isip, Orion.
Hindi, ito ang punto. In-explain ba ninyo bakit kayo nagbago ng pag-iisip? Hindi. Di ba? Masama yan, masama. Putang ina nyo, akala nyo walang... Tangina ninyo, akala nyo na nakakalimutan ng mga tao ang record. May internet ngayon, pwedeng mag-google lahat yan.
Gusto ni Digong mag-federalismo kaya ayaw nila. Ayaw na nila. Kasi gusto ni Digong kaya ayaw na nila.
Pero si Dominic sabi niya, sayang hindi na archive. Pero the truth is, maraming mga witnesses. Like for example, mismong si kaibigan natin, si Dean Tihanki. Siya mismo nagsabi. I mean, I told him, "Uy, Dean, alam mo, I have a copy of the booklet that you authored about liberalism." And it was, of course, co-sponsored by the Friedrich Naumann, the Friedrich Naumann Stiftung, which is the part of the Liberal Alliance. So there's this German group na parang yun yung Liberal Party ng Germany. And kaalyado niya yung Liberal Party ng Pilipinas. And the Liberal Alliance, Liberal International, puro sila mga gusto ng tanggal 60-40, lahat sila mga puro bringing foreign investors, ganyan. Tapos ito nga yung Liberal Party sa Pilipinas ngayon, kontra ng kontra. Yan yung weird di ba? Parang tangina nyo, nasa loob ng charter ng nasa loob ng inyong plataforma, nakasulat na kailangan maging bukas sa mga foreign investor para dumami mga trabaho. Tas kukontra kayo sa sarili ninyong plataforma. Ganon din yung akbayan.
Only in the Philippines yung Orion Kasi
only in the Philippines.
Kahit sa Amerika na hindi nga perpekto yung kanilang yung kinopya nating federal form, yung kanilang Republican type na presidential system, hindi nga natin di ba, meron tayong weaker version of that. Sila nga doon nagkakaproblema sa kanilang sariling sistema. Pero Orion, mapapansin mo, bihira nagko-cross party lines yung kanilang mga politiko na from Republican to Democrat or vice versa. Dito lang sa Pilipinas, pwedeng bukas hindi na ako pro-federalism kasi ayoko dun sa presidente mo.
Kaya nga weird talaga. Weird. Diba? I mean, it's like yung biglang yung pinaglalaban ko, actually nga dapat nga kayo masaya kumbaga. Kayong kunyari akbayan, pro-federalism kayo, dapat kayo nga munang unang papalakpak kasi pro-federalism kayo Tapos pag sinabi ng gobyerno na yung administrasyon isusulong natin yung federalismo, isa kayo dapat sa mga papalakpak. At hindi sana kayo kumontra. Kayo mismo sanang sasabi, "Uy, tutulong kami diyan." Tapos lalo pa sana kayong inimbita ng PDP Laban na sumama kayo, sige, gusto niyo rin sa federalism, we want to hear your inputs. So parang, 'di ba, mas maganda yung makuha rin natin yung point of view ng akbayan. Pro din naman kayo
It's diba? A case of short-sightedness rin, Orion.
Short-sightedness talaga.
Kung dapat kasi ang ginawa nila, hindi nila binase sa mga siguro critical principles ng yung pamamaraan ni presidente. Siguro dahil sa ayaw nila yung personality behind it. Hindi nila tiningnan yung merits of what they're trying to do. Na karamihan sa ginagawa ni presidente ay talagang yung mga gusto rin nila mangyari sana. Kung nag-cooperate sila at tinulungan nila si presidente doon sa mga gustong programa ni presidente, di sana nagkaroon pa sila ng plus points sa kanilang political capital. 'Di ba?
Kaya nga So, wala talaga
adversarial the whole time. Sila. Kaya nga bumaba sa
Pre, nasira yata yung audio mo. Teka lang.
Go ahead, Orion. Ayan.
Parang naputol naputol yung audio mo.
Ayan.
Anyway.
Sige, go.
Hindi, wala. I just commented na nawala yung audio mo.
Oo nga, yun na nga. So sinasabi ko, sabi ko na na instead sinabi na nga naging ano na nga yan naging fact na established na yan na pag kinontra mo, I think si Pichay, Congressman Pichay nagsabi, pag kinontra mo kasi si presidente, binatikos mo si presidente, yung rating mo bababa. So it's given because of his popularity, because people know that he's for reforms. If you're gonna go against him and say ridiculous things na walang basis, sigurado ang tao will go against you, and which has been happening. It happened to Manny Pacquiao now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't understand why the opposition will take that that very useful information or tidbit of parang information and use it, and instead of being kontra lang ng kontra, gamitin niyo yung mga sa tingin niyo pabor kayo, na sa tingin niyo na aligned sa inyong mga objectives, 'di ba, as a party. Hindi nangyari ganun na yun eh. Sili sana may pag-asa pa sana sila sa 2022 na kahit na nasa opposition sila, 'di ba? Kasi hindi sila talaga. Ay, walang nangyaring ganun. So, yun, Orion, and just we're in an hour and 25 minutes into our conversation.
I think it's time to go. It's already late.
Wala
It's time to go.
Tsaka walang supply ng chippy si Orion ngayong gabi.
Wala akong GP. Wala akong GP ngayon.
Gusto natin pasalamatan yung ating mga viewers, si Adrian Tepes, Gray Mendez, Dominic Solpico, Sue Santos, John David, Paul Ian, Mark Mingoa, Marivic Solis, JATC Ibarra, si Matthew Lawrence, Gray Mendez, Aquino Lorenzo, si Dominic Solpico of course, Paul Ian, si Daniel Daitol Verdel Abasen, Mikhail Ringolovich, and also si Aquino Lorenzo, John David. Maraming salamat sa pagkinig. Susan Winter, Cynthia Castren, sabi ni Cynthia, Orion, sana daw araw-araw ka mag-guest sa Istoryang Futbolero. Maawa naman kay Orion, sobrang busy ng tao na yan. Ang daming responsibilidad. Tsaka si May Makishi, tsaka si Denny Kiambao. Maraming salamat sa pagkinig sa Istoryang Futbolero. Any last words, Orion, before we go?
Wala guys, just continue checking out the website, the correctphilippines.org website. Just read the articles there. We have a huge arsenal of mga white papers, mga andami. Basta you check it out. Meron diyang isang parang puro PDF. Archive siya ng maraming mga PDF na sinulat ng mga tanyag ng mga researchers and PhDs all around. Marami kayong matututunan diyan. So magagamit niyo yan as ammunition when you get into debates. And maganda yan kapag binasa nyo yan and marami kayong magiging facts at your fingertips na magagamit ninyo kapag may mga kumukontra sa mga reforma.
Yun.
So, go into the website and read as much as you can.
Kailangan natin yan. Kailangan natin ng tamang impormasyon at kung if you're well-informed, it's easy for you to convince others of your advocacy.
Ito kasi, I wanted to say na one of the biggest problems kasi sa Pilipinas, maraming tao na mahilig sila magdebate na ang style ng debate nila, wala silang alam about the topic. Magaling lang sila mambaliktad ng mga words. Yung parang, alam mo yung gumagamit sila ng magandang words. So, pero kung ikaw, ako kasi, Battle of the Brains ako, di ba? Mahilig ako magbasa ng encyclopedia, dami kong alam eh. So, dahil doon, naka-armado na ako, tapos medyo maboka rin ako, mahilig ako mag-English din, di ba? Magaling. So natatalo ko agad yung mga Inglesero na walang kaalam-alam. So dapat mag-concentrate kayo na maging magaling, maraming alam, and at the same time, hasain ninyo ang sarili nyo sa pagiging magaling makipagdebate rin. So gamitin nyo yan, yung logic, yung skills, express yourselves in your native language as well as English. Importante pa rin yung English kahit anong gawin natin. And use the knowledge that you have. Make sure na yung knowledge, yung facts ang nagsasalita. Hindi yung kasi yung ibang tao dinadaan na lang nila sa mga hard words. Meron diyan isa yung si Bolo Pascual ang pangalan. Tragis.
Kahit yung best friend mo dinadaan sa si JAVAD
Si JAVAD, oo.
Dinadaan sa sa bihis, sa dating.
Dinadaan sa bihis. Dinadaan sa bihis, di ba? So, bihis. Pero, ito nga, nakakatawa. Magsusulat ng article na ang ganda-ganda ng English. Pero, pag nag-tweet siya, time flied like a butterfly. Fly the butterfly. Mali ang English. So, kaya nga, ang dami nagdududa. Puta, iba yata yung nagsusulat talaga ng kanyang mga article. Hindi yata
Baka
siya.
may nom de pen, parang...
Meron siyang, ghostwriter.
Ghostwriter.
May nagsasabi nga, may mga nagsasabi, si Walden Bello daw ang nagsusulat talaga ng kanyang mga libro at article.
Tayo dyan.
Yun ang sabi ng iba. Hindi ako nagsabi niyan. Sabi ng ibang tao yan.
Naalala ko tuloy, yung ating pinag-usapan, yung yung favorite professor mo, invite mo naman dito, si Clarita, si Professor
oo
Clarita.
nga pala, oo. Si
Diba?
Professor Claire, oo. Sige.
Yan naman natin, invite natin sa Istoryang Futbolero para lalong maging talagang enjoyable yung ating conversation pag pinapag-usapan ang konstitusyon dito sa Constipation Friday with Orion Perez Dumdum.
Alright.
Okay, bye. Salamat.
1987 Constipation
1987 Constipation. Kailangan na talaga ng anong gamot na kailangan natin dyan, Orion, for constipation again?
Laxative.
Kailangan ng laxative, correct. So, yun, that's it, guys. Maraming salamat, Orion. Have a great weekend. It's been a pleasure as usual. What a way to end our week dito sa Istoryang Futbolero with Orion Perez Dumdum. Next Friday ulit, Orion.
Yep. I'll see, we might have a different time slot for that kasi meron din akong there's this other linguistic naman to may linguistic tawag nito, may linguistic hindi naman conference pero parang telecon akong i-attend about Austronesian languages and stuff. I mean, I'm gonna put it on my Facebook when that happens, and that'll be around 9. So I think we might have, I don't know what time we'll be able to do our Constipation Fridays.
No problem, man. Adjustable, it's easy to adjust our time. Pag Fridays, diba? Kasi weekend naman.
Weekend naman.
And, tsaka huwag niyong kalimutan na sumali kayo dun sa Game of Giants kasi kailangan natin ng voter education. We're pushing for that. Do help us out and do it yourself para ma-encourage yung mga kasama ninyo na sumapi at sumali sa Game of Giants. And download those polycards. Check out blueprint.ph. Maraming salamat sa ating mga kaibigan from blueprint.ph for having such a wonderful cause. Voter education is what we need, especially for 2022. Don't forget the reminders of the DOH. Hindi pa po tapos yung pandemya. Nandito na daw po yung Delta variant ng COVID. Nakakabwisit talaga pero kailangan nating talagang harapin itong mga challenges na to. Always, don't forget, mask, hugas, iwas. Mask, hugas, iwas. At huwag magkalat ng maling impormasyon at huwag matakot magpabakuna para matapos na itong problema natin na pandemya dito sa Pilipinas at sa buong mundo. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much, Orion. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
See you again. Bye.